Look, I might be the spreadsheet girl on this website, but you're probably still looking at this screenshot with several questions. What is this? How did it get here? What did you make it? Why did you make it? What's wrong with you? Well, to explain that, I have to tell you a story. Our story begins with some trepidation in 2017. The orange guy was president, and some other funny things probably happened. I don't know, I was depressed. But the point of us being here is that a small British mobile game development team, Hutch Games, released a game called Top Drives. 6.5 years later, the game is still going, and for this story, there's only really two things you need to know about it. It's very unique, and it kind of sucks. To be fair, the core concept of the game is pretty cool. You collect from a massive list of cars that are rendered as trading cards with photos on them, and then you essentially play top trumps with physics to win races and unlock more stuff. The issues more arise from Hutch's generalized continued mishandling of the game over its life cycle, which led to a pretty common sentiment in the community that anyone with a brain could take the concept of top drives and execute it better than Hutch. Fast forward to 2023. I had just left the dev team of one of the more advanced efforts to recreate top drives for personal reasons, but I was still fascinated by the potential of the game's concept and seeing what I myself could do with it, which led me, as it usually does, to Google Sheets. That led to the creation of this sheet, which now exists as old calc, hidden away in the hidden sheets on the final product. It was fine, but ultimately messy and unsatisfying, so I shelved the project and thought I would never do much with it again. Fast forward again to 2024, specifically a couple of weeks ago, when a friend of mine who creates custom challenges for Top Drive's custom card creators had a bit of a problem. There had been pretty persistent squabbles and quibbles among their players about the results of certain races between cars with particularly close stat lines, and they didn't really have a way of solving that in a way that made everyone happy, until I remembered this old spreadsheet of mine existed. I offered it to them, polished it up a bit to make it more functional and less wacky, and they were very happy. Then I got to thinking. I don't exactly remember when or how I was compelled to turn that crappy little calculator into this. The last week has honestly been kind of a haze, but the vision was clear. None of the fan projects I'd worked on, either individually or with groups, had ever been able to fully replicate Top Drives' 5-on-5 races. I realized after I'd fiddled around with the sheet a bit that I could change that. Everything in the campaign starts here, in the Levels tab. When you select a location and a level, the corresponding level data is drawn into the campaign interface, and this is where it comes from. Each level has 5 tracks, 5 cars, and 5 tunes, one for each slot. The tracks are basically collections of performance criteria that you can find in the Tracks tab that tell the game what types of cars should win where. The cars are themselves big bundles of data that you can find in the Cars tab, and the tunes are an artifact of Top Drives and the other fan projects I've worked on that allow you to upgrade a car's stats to make it faster. In order for these campaign levels to not suck, I do actually have to handcraft them myself, which I would describe as the most tedious, really fun thing I've ever done. I just realized that we are 4 minutes into the car game video, and I haven't told you how a car works in the car game, so let's fix that. In short, each car has 8 main attributes, which you can see on both cars in the demo calculator here. Some of these are more obvious in their use than others. The ones you might not get right off the rip are GC, which is short for ground clearance, which is sort of an abstraction, an awkward one at that, of how well a car can go over bumps, and MRA, which is Top Drive's community thing, short for mid-range acceleration, Basically an estimate of how well the car's acceleration curve keeps going past 60 miles an hour. Now that I'm done with my panicked ramble about car stats, and I've also discovered that I can unscrew my microphone from its stand for a much more comfortable recording setup, let's talk about the final product of the race calculator, your result. We have our opponent cars as determined by the levels tab, but what about yours? Well, you start with a garage of 6 pretty basic cars, and then you can select whichever ones you want as long as they fit within the RQ limit. RQ is a number, again, lifted awkwardly from top drives with some tweaks that gives a rough estimate of how good a car is across all the tracks in the game, and as long as your 5 cars fit under that limit, you're good to race. For the first level in the game, it's 500, and your cars are averaging about 20, so it's really not an issue. But whenever you set up your cars right, you can click the checkbox in the bottom left and see how well you've done. A loss happens if you lose more than 2 of the 5 rounds, or if you win 3 rounds but your losses in the other 2 are severe enough that your overall total scores don't add up to more than 0. And in case you're interested in how those races end up being calculated, since I don't think I really adequately explained that, here's some dull, nitty-gritty stuff, because judging by the reaction to the airline spreadsheet, you guys love that. What's happening here is 5 copies of this calculator in another tab that are running through the 5 different pairs of cars, comparing each of their relevant stats as determined by the priorities on the tracks. For example, if a track has 0 top speed priority, or quite commonly 0 weight priority, that stat will be completely disregarded in the comparison. Then it takes the difference of those 2 stats, multiplies it by some numbers, like a factor that makes the numbers make sense relative to each other, and then the priority of the track it's on. So if you're multiplying by 0, you get 0, as you can imagine, then adds all those numbers together and creates a final number that will determine which of the 2 cars wins. But what happens when the campaign levels get harder? What happens when those rubbish little starting cars aren't good enough to carry you through levels? Well, it's time to open a pack, because this is a gacha game. God help us all. Once you've got enough tokens, which the token system is a little wonky because Google Sheets can't exactly do variables, once you have enough tokens, you can go down below the campaign interface and open a pack. There are currently 3 types of packs, although I have plans to add more in the future. The higher the cost of the pack, generally the better cars you're going to get. I also need to add a piece of interface that tells you what the actual drop rates are for the packs. I haven't done that yet. It's a mess. But I digress. When you open a pack, it'll generate a set of 5 random cars according to a series of parameters and a few random numbers that are going on in the background in the data tab, which you can't see. Once those cars are generated, and remember, if you get a good pack, you should grab it immediately, because due to the way random numbers work in Google Sheets, any breathing or changing of the sheet will re-randomize the numbers and you'll lose your pack forever. Once you've got your pack, you need to copy it, paste its values into your garage, as well as noting down or pasting the amount of fuse you get from duplicate cars, because this game doesn't have a system for having 2 of the same car, so I just cheated and made it so that it automatically fuses duplicates and you can retune things. It's all very scary, this whole game development business, but I digress. You can copy the cars into your garage, and then the next time you open up a campaign level, you'll be able to use the new cars for your races. There's one more tab, both in the how to play section and in the actual game tab of the game. A thing I coded in an hour that I am inordinately proud of. The Leagues feature. This is essentially an approximation of how multiplayer works in top drives, with the consideration that I can't have actual servers and multiplayer and other players because this is a Google Sheet. How it works instead is that you choose a cup, which there's a selection of currently in the current demo 6, which are unlocked as you progress through the campaign, so don't forget to go to the levels tab and tick those campaign completion boxes, because that's how you actually unlock the cups. And once you unlock a cup, you can select it. You'll see that it has an RQ limit and a restriction. The restriction is what's important, because on the one hand, the cars that you'll be facing in the cup will generate based on that restriction. So if it restricts to German cars or coupes or whatever, it will only generate those types of cars on the random opponents. But you'll have to use that type of car too. And while you have to adhere to the RQ limit, the opponents kinda don't. However, there is an advantage to taking on tougher opponents. They grant more rating points. Rating points are how you progress in leagues, and each league has a series of milestones that ultimately culminates in a prize car. Prize cars are special cars that can't be pulled from packs, so you have to earn them from the leagues. In the current demo, there are about 30 or so, but only 8 can be earned from the 6 available leagues. Once there's a fuller game on offer, more of the prize cars will be available. Rating points also get harder to earn the higher up in rank you go. This is to simulate the increased difficulty of up-ranking once you get to higher ranks in actual games, and is done by dividing the base value of ranking points that you receive from a hand of opponent cars by a factor of your current ranking. This means that as your ranking gets bigger, the number gets divided more, and you earn fewer and fewer points from completing races. When I tested this, going from about rank 500 to rank 700 to win the Touring Cup, it was actually kind of a slog, but in a super fun way that I was very surprised by. And therein ultimately lay the crux of this game. It was not really meant to be much of anything. I built it in a Google Sheet in a week, mostly to see if I could. I got some friends involved to playtest the game and add new cars and things. And the other day I sat down and played it for a couple hours to experience all the content in the current demo, and it's fun! I made a fun game! A Google Sheet! It's crazy, like ATGS. ATGS was not fun. It was a weird game, and you had to make your own fun. This is fun. This is a fun game. And you want proof? You want proof that it's a fun game? I'm rambling. You want proof that it's a fun game? Instead of me talking about, tiny individual formulas, which I know some people want, but I am anxious and I don't know how to make that interesting, if you want to see if this game is fun, you can play it yourself, because there's a link in the description to a playtest Google Sheet that you can make a copy of and play the whole game yourself. And of course you're going to look at this game and think, well, since I can edit the Google Sheet, I can just cheat however I want. But that would take away the fun. And, hand on heart, this game is fun. I made a fun game in a week in a Google Sheet. I keep saying that because now that I'm saying it live on recording, it sounds so crazy. But based on at least my experience, I don't know what yours will be like, but based on my experience, it's true. And, I just am amazed. So, thank you for, encouraging me to keep going with this whole Google Sheet Games thing. Who knows what'll come next, but until then, I'll see you all in the next one.